Okay, let's try this one more time here. I think everyone can hear me now. We just did a quick switcheroo of the computers. First time that's ever happened, so you just never know with technology, but we are ready to roll now for our workshop tonight. Thank you for your patience. Tonight's workshop is going to focus on using data as a program-saving advocacy tool. And usually when we talk about data, it's independent of the word advocacy. Sometimes I think they're two separate worlds. Like, we do all this stuff that we have to with data in our art program, and then we think of advocacy as doing something other, like picketing, at the courthouse, or putting on an art show. But what if we took those two things and combined them? Because they're such a natural fit, and sometimes I don't know if we always see that. So I want to help you tonight to make some natural connections to how to use data as advocacy. And I also will cover, the 6 important strategic groups that you need to know in your school and community in order to use that data to advocate for your art program. So the first thing I want to go over tonight is, and this might be a little bit small for you here, but we'll provide you with the entire presentation after. We'll post that as an article for you. And I'm going to read these through. So I think data is not, and assessment is not necessarily a bad thing. I am a fan, and not of doing it excessively, not of doing it where we are trying to assess every single student on our roster in great detail, because it has to be manageable. But when you can get data, you can do some powerful things with it. So here are my top 10 reasons why I think art assessment matters. The first one is program evaluation. So if you have an assessment, you know if your curriculum is working, you know what students have learned. And number 2 can be program saving. The arts are usually the first to get cut. No one ever told me when I started teaching art that I would be on a constant uphill battle. I just assumed everyone would instantly give me the respect that I felt art teachers deserved, and it just wasn't so. There were all these misconceptions even my own colleagues had about what teaching art is. And so we always have to find all the ammunition we can to save our art program, and sometimes data can be one of those. Assessment helps us to be more accountable. I know when I had to actually submit assessment data for my teaching, I started teaching differently. I was more explicit, I was more intentional, I made sure that I hit the things I needed to hit, and it actually made me become quite a better teacher. Number 4, assessment can be very intimidating. So all of a sudden you're going about your whole world, teaching art, doing your thing, and someone says, okay, now these numbers are going to be associated with your performance, your pay, your credibility. And it's not the only thing, but that's all they kind of want to see sometimes. And so I think, it can be kind of intimidating to say, yep, these are my numbers, and they're not 100%, and I have to put that out there for the world to see. But as you'll see, there's a lot of ways to show that growth and show where you've come, and not just that ending number. Number 5, assessment helps you take risks with your teaching, helps you grow as a teacher. I tried strategies, projects, formative assessments that I never would have tried before, because I wanted to see if that would help my students learn in new ways. And so it made me try new things, get out of my comfort zone a little bit, if you know what I mean. Number 6, assessment matters because it helps us reflect. So I noticed that in my assessment data, all my students were bombing 1-point perspective. And I thought, well, I always teach that so well, and the pieces look beautiful, and my students are learning. But I found out that they were just kind of copying and doing kind of rote memorizations of what I had taught them. So they followed me step by step, but they couldn't do it independently. So I realized, had I really taught that, and maybe you can argue with me there, had I really taught it if they can't do it by themselves, but I learned that they were using me as a crutch during the project, I maybe needed to give more independence. So it taught me a lot about my teaching that I didn't know when I started to collect that data. Number 7, student reflection. So when you do some sort of assessment and the students reflect on themselves, then they can show you, what they learned. And sometimes when you ask them, what was something you'll never forget about this project, you will get information that you never would have thought of. But by asking those kind of questions, you say, it had this impact, and I didn't even know it. And it also helps parents know as well when students can talk accurately about their artwork. Number 8, it can be a source of pride to have data and assessment, numbers to link your program back to. When you go out to the school board and say, art students achieved 85% proficient in art this year, wow, that kind of makes you feel really good to be able to say that. And sometimes numbers are a way to quantify that, even though there's so many visual things that we do. Other people in our world don't always see that as much as they see a number. So it can help to have those numbers as ammunition to back you. Number 9, it's innovative. There are so many schools that aren't using assessments in art, or art teachers are being kind of forced to do their assessments. And if we're proactive, if you're doing an assessment, even if it's not asked of you, and then you share that, wow, someone might say to you, I'm impressed. I didn't even realize they were doing anything beyond finger painting in art class. So they're actually collecting data. This is worth looking at. It can turn some heads. And then number 10, which some people have kind of called me out on this, and they think I'm maybe being a little bit data friendly, but let's face it, our kids deserve it. So showing that our students are learning and proving that out in different ways, not just a test, can do justice to our students in their learning, can give us something to track, and make us seem just that much more professional, which we can use every bit of that, especially in today's educational climate. But I have on bold here at the bottom, data does not have to mean test scores. I'm going to share with you tonight some kind of sneaky ways to get some data with what you're already doing, to put that into numbers and graphs quickly and easily, so that it doesn't mean you have to give 5 tests just to get some data. So let's move forward with some more tips and tricks here for assessment as advocacy. The first thing I want to just preface this by saying is a good art room assessment, in my opinion, is fast to take, fast to grade for you because you don't have a lot of time. It's simple, it's short, it gets to the most important concepts that you teach. If you're trying to assess everything with all 800 of your students, you'll never get rich data. But maybe just focus on your goal for the year, which might be color, or might be a certain student self-reflection, or talking about that, or whatever your big thing is. Stick to that, make it short, make it sweet, get multiple data points, and try to get that data with the least amount of classroom time. I don't want to say wasted, because I just gave 10 reasons why data isn't a waste. But what I do want to say is that you need to get students back to the most important thing, which is making the art. But we do need to get sometimes use that artwork and some extras to get some data. So those are kind of my philosophies with assessment. We need to just kind of simplify, 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 and get back to making art with our students. And I also want to preface the rest of this presentation by saying the importance of piloting. Piloting is an administrative friendly word that means, can I just try this out with 4th grade, for example? A lot of times when we're writing a growth goal, or when we're working on getting some data, our administration doesn't think about the sheer volume of students that we sometimes have and how quickly they come in and out of our art room. And so they'll just say, yeah, you have to assess all your students. Of course, my kindergarten teacher has to assess all their students, so why wouldn't you? Well, stop and think about that. The kindergarten teacher is assessing 25, 30 of their students, which they see every single day, almost all day. If it was equally proportionate, you should probably only be assessing a sampling of your population that's proportionate to the amount of time that you actually see them. And so that's a great tool for you to go to your principal or administrator and say, why am I assessing in detail 900 kids when I only see them this amount of time? Can I focus on a pilot group and really go deeper, especially given the amount of time that I have? The amount of students should be similar. So if a classroom teacher is assessing 25, maybe you should have 50 or less as your group, if that's available to you, that option. But sometimes we just have to ask. So, getting some data without getting all kinds of data can still be very, very beneficial. So before I move on to the next slide, I want to do a quick poll here, because I am interested in let's see, kind of having you tell me a little bit about your situation. Let's see, I'm not seeing my poll. So I'm just going to ask you in the chat section here, are you able to have to do data? And you could respond in the chat. Are you required to do data and gain some sort of numbers? Are you doing it to kind of promote yourself and try to get out there even though it's not required? Or are you hoping to do that in the future? I'm just kind of curious if you could tell me in the chat, how many people are actually required to submit data in some shape or form to their administration, and or moving towards it and trying to learn and maybe doing some test piloting. A lot of people doing their SGOs, their SLOs, several times per trimester, hoping to. Since it's not required for some of you, it makes it really hard to do that, isn't it? Because it's like, how do I add something to my own plate? But I'm going to talk today about how you can really do that, and you can still add it to your plate for minimal time and gain those heads turning, because it's coming. I'll just put that out there right now. Initiatives are coming whether it's required of you or not. And so I really like the positive attitudes here. Everyone's saying I want to be proactive, and if you have to, it can be kind of a drag, but we're going to try to make it more palatable here tonight. Great, thank you for weighing in with all of your opinions. I know it helps all of us to see what's going on around the country and help us to get suggestions and support from each other. The next thing I want to talk about, let's say you've done an assessment, and I have so many resources on assessment, and this presentation is more about advocacy than assessment, but I wanted to talk a little about that. But let's say you get some form of data. You get a percentage, you get a ending number for your totals for your students. So the first step in what do you usually do with that data? Well, you put it on the SMART goal form that your principal made you fill out. You hand it in and you say, "Phew, I'm done," and wash your hands of it and hope that nobody asks you anything more about it. But what I would say is there's more to do after we put them on the forms that we have to fill out. We should be shouting this data from the rooftops, even if it's not that great. So, for example, the first year I did a 4th grade assessment. It was a really badly written assessment, which I've learned from, and I've tried to help everyone not to make the same mistakes I did. And we got 40% proficiency in the whole 4th grade as an art department team. Horrible, right? Those scores are bad. It was a bad written assessment. It was just bad all around. So next year we revamped it and we got 80%. And so we went to the school board and we said, look at this. We started at 40. Our students weren't used to doing assessment. And now we're moved up to 80%. And look at that growth that we had, and our students are doing great, and they're getting used to this, and we've improved our, all that shows is a story that you care, a story that you improve. And so after you get your data, you should do something with it beyond the form. And one really great website to do that is called piecolor.com. And it allows you to take simple data and put it into a colorful pie graph and kind of show the breakdown. So you could show this part was our portfolio, these were student reflections, or this is a percentage of 4th graders that were proficient, and then 3rd. However you want to compile your data, this would be great for presenting to one of the 6 groups I'm going to talk about later. And or collecting data and organizing your numbers doesn't have to be difficult. This simple sheet that I have on the screen just allows you to take, each of your classes, your courses, your sections, and, tally how many students got a 3 on the project, how many got a 2, how many got a 1. I'm just talking about a basic art project you're already grading for report cards. Just tally up. I had this many get a 3, this many get a 2, this many get a 1, number of students, divide it out, and you can say, simple data with what you're already doing. All right, I'm going to divide this by the total number, and I had 88 students get a 3 or meet my standard when we did 1-point perspective. So do you see how you can get a percentage, a quick percentage, just from doing your report cards? And it doesn't require an extra assessment, but that's some pretty powerful data to go share with your administration. So using a simple sheet like this just to do some tallies, and boom, you have some data organized. I know a lot of what you're required is a little more in depth, but if you're just starting out, this might be a great place to start. So after you have organized your data, then you need to share it. So I know that it seems strange that we want to share this data, but we need to go the step beyond. Because as an art teacher, if you don't do everything in your power to be noticed, you will become irreplaceable. Because we kind of can get into the back burner and we can just kind of sit behind the scenes, and then our administrators are focused on math and reading and all these other initiatives. It's just we have to nose our way in whatever way we can, hopefully by the amazing artwork that you are producing, but there can always be more to round it out. So perhaps once you have your data, you share it, and here's some ways to share it, and I'll talk about who you need to share this with next. Maybe you'll write an article in the local newspaper, post your data on your school blog or website. I'm not just saying here's what we did in 5th grade. I'm saying this many students were proficient, because parents will start to see it, oh, they're keeping track. There's proficiency in art. It'll start to turn heads. It's just very simple. Invite the superintendent or principal into the art room when you're doing formative assessments or doing an assessment or doing the artwork or self-reflection. One great tip is, ask if you're doing portrait drawings, ask your principal if they'll sit in and the students could draw the principal and they get to see art firsthand. How fun would that be and engaging? Students would never forget it. I had my principal come in during weaving. I invited her in. I said, come on in. We're doing this really amazing weaving. I bet you've never seen this weaving like this. I invite you to our classroom this month. And who invites the principal in? Usually we're looking out of the corner of our eye oh, are they going to watch me? And so doing that, someone said, my after-school kids drew the principal. When he posed, he fell asleep. That's awesome. Well, kudos for you for trying. I love those stories. But whatever you do, take the extra mile to get noticed. So there are 6 strategic supporters you need to help save your art program. And when all of these 6 are working together, then you have done your part in your reach. And some of these are harder to reach, and some of these you don't think you need to reach. But I'm going to show you after I go through each group how you can strategically reach them throughout a school year without a lot of headache. So the first one is your own students. We think our students know us, they love us, but we sometimes forget that we need to remember that they are our best advocates. They're the ones who are closest to us. They're the ones who feel when they create. They're the ones who are understanding what art really feels like, and we need to help them to be able to communicate that back to their families. How can we get them so excited about art that they can't stop talking about it when they go home? How can we help them verbalize why art's important to them and then put that publicly? How can we draw that out of them in new ways? So focusing on our students as a group should be our very most important, because that's what, why we teach. Group number 2 that you need to save your art program are parents and guardians. So the students, who's closest to the students, their parents. And have you ever noticed that when you have a suggestion for your school district and the teachers come together, they don't listen, but one angry parent comes in and boom, everybody's changing things, because schools can get competitive that way. Parents have a lot of pull. And so do you have an art advocate group for your parents? Do you have a parent booster? I think about music too, and I noticed the music programs have these fabulous booster programs. So there's these, they sell this and get money for this, and the marching band and the boosters and the parents, and they get really into it, and it's like a big rally. What could we learn from that? Could we have an art booster group? What would that look like? I don't know. That's for you to kind of think about. But looking at other groups who succeed with that, and how can we take bits and pieces that work for the arts, because we are different, we're not banned, and kind of try to capitalize on that a little bit. Also, just communicating with parents any way possible about what's happening in the art room, authentically happening through a million different means, a blog, sending notes home, things like that, which you're probably doing, is a great way to connect with them. Group number 3 are your own colleagues. One of my favorite examples of how sometimes our colleagues don't respect us, even though they like us. Okay, so other teachers in our building probably think we're awesome because we're the art teacher, we're the cool ones, right? But do they respect us and understand what we do? Many of them probably yes. But have you ever noticed your students, you'll be walking by and you'll get a backhanded compliment. So a colleague might say something like, wow, I just cannot believe that 2nd graders made this artwork, or 6th graders can do this. I can't even draw a stick person. I just couldn't even do this as an adult. I can't believe you can. Would you ever go into the classroom and say, well, I can't believe these kids can add like this. I was really bad at math and I just hate math. And, you wouldn't do that back to them, would you? And so I just think there's those little pieces that come in about, finger painting and stick figures and pot holders and these little jabs, and they don't realize it, but I presented to my own staff. I asked to have a slot at the staff meeting, I know, crazy, to share the assessments the art team was working on. My colleagues, even though I see them every single day, had absolutely no clue that we were even doing assessments in art. They just hear the kids talk about, excited about the glue and excited about this artist. And it was enlightening, and it was 10 minutes that I shared. And they were actually asking me for some performance-based, types of tips, because they're trying to assess beyond the bubble, and they're trying to assess their writing, and which is kind of similar. So anyway, long story short, your colleagues is number 3. Number 4 is your administration, which I talk about this all the time, because your administration, whether it be at the district level, at the county level, at the building level, your vice principal, they, can make a lot of decisions, and you need to keep their respect. I always use the example of, if your desk is just piled with papers, which happens to all of us, and your principal walks in, what is that saying about you? Even though it doesn't mean you're a bad teacher, what is that saying? What is every little thing we do saying about us? And how can we continue to have professionalism? Not because we're the art teacher and we can get away with the other, but reaching out for administration in different ways. Number 5 is your community at large. And this is when I'm talking about businesses around town, not just parents of your students, but their grandparents and the local art centers, the local science centers, any kind of local entity that maybe isn't directly affiliated with the school. How can we display artwork in community places? How can we meet and explain the value of the arts to a local business who's looking for maybe some interns to come in the summer and do some design work, things like that. And then number 6 is the legislature, local and national. So there are ways in our government system to get the word out. And this is kind of the last one I would go to, because sometimes I think, we don't need to be picketing for the arts, but yet do you know when laws are passed? Do you know when you're an administrative level? Do you know when your school board meets and does the budget? Are you getting into those places at the right times in the year, or are you just kind of letting it all go by? Sometimes we react. We hear about this law didn't pass after the fact. Well, I didn't know that they were even voting on it. So staying up to speed on that can be tricky, but there should be an arts council or an arts advocacy group in every state that is working towards some of these measures. So I would highly, recommend trying to reach out to them. We had some art, someone said their art was damaged when they displayed it at a local place. I actually had that happen in our district as well. We moved to do some display digitally. They had TVs and they display up because it wasn't a proper location for artwork to be hung. So there's just a lot of ways, whatever works for you. None of us can do all of these things. But the next thing I want to talk about is how you can do them all, and you don't have to do them all at the same time. This is zoomed in so you can see here just a snippet of this advocacy calendar. But what I love about this calendar is every month, let's say you choose an area to focus on. So every September, my focus is my students, and I do a big back to school why art is important. And I just focus on advocating to that strategic group in September. Then in October, I visit a PTA or PTO meeting, and I focus on the parents. Every October, I sit at that PTO meeting, maybe again in March. But I don't try to make every single meeting because it seems impossible, doesn't it? And we have lives. Believe it or not, as students see us in the grocery store, like, you need groceries, like you don't live at school. And so what can we do little bits? Because if I think about it, it gets overwhelming. So I go to no PTA meetings because I don't have time for that, right? We've all been there. So if I just say, I'm giving myself October, I'm going to ask for a slot, I'm going to talk about, art show or some guest artist I want funded, and then maybe share some data while I'm there. In November, perhaps your focus is parents, and you have parent-teacher conferences, so you're going to do an extra push for them. And that's build it into what you're already doing. So in March, you might focus on your colleagues. It's Youth Art Month. You're going to do a collaborative project with your other colleagues and do an interdisciplinary Common Core thing and plan it just for March, not every month. And by the end of this year, you can see how it goes. You could have hit every single group once or even twice. And then all you have to do is have a file folder for each month, and then what you did last year, repeat. Or if you didn't like it, change it or tweak it. And it's just, I really like how this breaks it down for you. And of course, you're going to keep doing things like posting to your art room website or doing your Artsonia or sending home notes. I think that's just ongoing. But what about these bigger things? Like I do not have time to write a letter to my legislature, but maybe once in January you could send a little note. And if you could get 10 other art teachers, there's power in numbers. So the calendar is a really helpful tip, and I'm going to post this. I'll post the sample for you when we're going to record this so you can view it later, and we'll put it as an article on AOE, and I'll try to add in the blank one as well so you can see that and you'll fill it in yourself. But it's just a simple spreadsheet. You might want to add more columns or personalize it. Go ahead, steal it, use it, tweak it, make it your own. It's to share. I got it at an advocacy training a long time ago, and they said share it, and so I'm sharing, and every good idea keeps getting tweaked and changed. So that is one of my favorite tools to tuck into your toolbox to hit all those groups. So that concludes our presentation tonight. Just a lot of little snippets about assessment, data, using it as advocacy, and then advocating without being having to do more. You're already doing these great things. How can we build it in? And don't forget to share the data. Get it off of the paper that you had to submit and share it, even if it's not the best, and talk about your plan to improve. It will show that you're a very serious and professional teacher. A lot of these same types of tools are things that we work through in our Advocating for the Arts class, which runs next month. And so if you kind of like this idea of strategic advocacy without doing more, there's definitely a lot more resources like the calendar in the class. So thank you for coming tonight. If you would, I'm going to stick around here and answer any questions that you have about the content. This was a lot of stuff tonight, and so I didn't get all of your questions answered in the chat. But you will, if you'd like to download the certificate of for 1 hour. We put 1 hour because you have resources, you can reflect on it. We're going to be here for almost 30 minutes, and Derek is throwing that in the chat bar. So you can go ahead and grab your certificate, and if you didn't grab it tonight, you can always email help@theartofed.com, and Sarah will send you a copy of the certificate if you didn't catch it tonight for 1 PD hour to use for your PD needs. We had a lot of teachers request that. So if you have any questions, I'm going to stick around about our upcoming online conference, our 5 courses starting next month, workshops, article ideas. I am here and available to answer your questions. So if you need a past certificate, go ahead and email help@theartofed.com, and Sarah will send you the past ones. We started doing them about 2 months ago, and we'll get you the documentation you need. She can roll them into one certificate if you need to as well. A lot of teachers are logging hours, so we're happy to provide that for you. To download it, you just click on the PDF that Derek wrote certificate there, and just click on that, and it should open up in your browser, and then you can save it. If you need a different type of format, email help@theartofed.com, and we'll be sure to get you what you need. This format as well, if this is your first workshop, this is the type of format that we use in our online conference in January 25th. So you'll hear from not just me, but 25 presenters from around the country talking, sharing resources, the chat to interact with each other. So if you like this format, this is what the online conference feels like in a nutshell. So any other questions about Art Ed, article ideas, questions about course content? Someone would like to know about the online course Autism and Art. Jacqueline, if you send an email to help@theartofed.com, we can give you some more specifics, but we basically talk about a lot of strategies for your classroom in that class. So how to set up a successful learning environment for students with autism, whether it's the fluorescent lights or a visual picture system to help them focus, or working with your teacher's aides so they're not doing the art for the student. A lot of that stuff, and then also about the art making and how they can have ownership of the art room and some art kind of skills. But it's a lot about the organization and the prepping so that all students can succeed, getting to know them better, things like that. So we can definitely get you more detail. If you need a sample syllabus and you email me, I can send it to you to review as well. Let's see. I would have to look at the course schedule, but the Autism and Art course runs again, I believe, next in February, starting on February 1st. So you can go to theartofed.com/classes and see more about that. I have created worksheets and offered pre and post tests to collect data. What do you think? I think pre and post is a great place to start to collect data and get growth, but really in-depth student growth will actually have multiple data points in the middle so that you have more than just the ending and the beginning, and they have 2 shots to get it right or wrong. And so I think that's a great start to think about things that you're already doing all along the way and how can you get some more data points in there. But that's definitely a good start to show that growth. Sometimes teachers don't even do a pre-test and they just do ending data, student achievement data. But a lot of administrators are asking for that pre-data, so it just depends on what's required of you. We do have 1 workshop per month, and so every month check back. It's kind of near the end of the month, the last Tuesday or the 3rd Tuesday of every month, sometimes Monday with the holiday week here. We will be putting on a workshop of different topics. I'll be releasing a bunch more new topics too. I'm hoping to do student growth as one of them soon. I know there's a lot of teachers with that initiative right now in a lot of states. So if you'd like to receive notifications like you did tonight, just stay on the list and we'll send them to you. Christine will definitely send you with some specific questions. Just send an email, help@theartofed.com, and we'll get you the resources you need. We actually wrote an article about how someone's asking about holiday crafts for classes. I'll stay on a few more minutes here. We wrote an article about that. If you type in the search bar something with crafts, like how to prevent your art room from becoming a holiday craft factory, and kind of incorporating seasonal things, but don't be expected to make the gifts. Some teachers will do like clay around the holiday time so students have something to take home, but it's not done as a gift. Things like that. People always expect that though. It's kind of an interesting line that we play because people enjoy art and it's gift worthy, which is a good thing, but we can't be doing paper snowflakes all winter either. So the certificate was linked in this chat. Derek put it up there. Maybe he could throw it in one more time for all of you who are still connected tonight. And I think an art portfolio is a wonderful gift to send home with beautiful art to frame for the parents that are putting it on Artsonia so they can purchase mugs for the grandparents with the artwork on it. I mean, again, more advocacy. It's all tied together. Or doing your fundraiser, like your Art to Remember or something like that around that time. So great questions. It's fun to chat with you about all these different topics and just kind of shooting from the hip here. It's great. Well, if you need anything more, we're going to kind of wrap it up tonight. It's a little after 8:30 here Central Time. And please join us for another workshop. We will be providing all of these resources to you. I'll give you that sample advocacy calendar. And just think strategically about your advocacy and how you can plug in those really important words to the people where it matters, because that could be the difference between heads turning at your art program or people just assuming what you're doing. So thank you for coming, and have a great evening, and we will be in touch. If you need anything, send us an email at help@theartofed.com, and we'll be happy to answer. Have a great week, and have a great evening. Bye, everyone.